Right, should be live.
Hello, everybody.
Um,
Installment 3. It's feeling very autumnal now compared to when we first started these, isn't it, Martin? It was sunny at the beginning of the month.
It was the good old days, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, it was.
I don't know. It's yeah. Sorry, just having a bit of a hiccup. I can't see us live. I don't know if you can.
Installment 3. It's feeling very.
Yes, we are live.
We're alive. We're alive. Fabulous.
Sorry about that, John.
No problem at all.
So yeah, it's what started off. It was very, very sunny, and everything was all good, and yeah, it's completely different now, and I think we're about to be battered by is it 40 miles an hour winds or something?
Yep, first storm of the season, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yep. Just as we're talking, by the way, if anybody's got any questions or any thoughts or anything that they'd like to talk about, please please have a chat, and we'd be happy to help you. So this week is really about the quick wins that we can have with AI, and it's looking at it from a marketing perspective, but it's also looking at it from a perspective of how you can, from a wider organizational perspective as well. From my perspective, I suppose a lot of it is from a marketing. So obviously, I'm an SEO. I'm also a digital strategist as well. So I use AI, and I think since ChatGPT came in 2023, it's obviously had a massive effect. How big of an effect for you has it had, John?
Oh, absolutely massive. And I think, within the role that I do, so I'm communications and digital engagement director at Epilepsy Action. There's always things that get pulled up as like, this is the next big thing, that's the next big thing. This genuinely has been almost immediate in terms of its impact on us, in terms of how we get in front of people. So yeah, very very big deal.
Excellent. Yeah, it is. And we talked about last week some of the issues and if you missed last week, we did talk about some of the impact that we saw internally, where we saw some organizations where 58% of people were using ChatGPT without telling the IT company or telling their sector leads. They were often sharing huge amounts of private information to that organization on ChatGPT or LLMs, and not realizing that actually it's a very shareable, very shareable data, especially with ChatGPT, which has to share the data with the US government. And then if you're using some of the Chinese LLMs, obviously that's shared with the Chinese government. So there's a lot of privacy issues, and we talked about that last week. So it's well worth you checking out. I think from my perspective, kind of the biggest sort of areas I saw, and it is really from research. So obviously for my obviously as an SEO, what do? I obviously do keyword research. I'm researching competitors, and I need to get a huge amount of information very, very quickly. So keyword research, when I started 20 years ago, keyword research could be a 2 or 3 day billable time, to be honest, to the client to research keywords, strategy, to pull all that together. I can literally do that now within about 2 hours. I have ChatGPT. I also use Claude, and they are connected to something called an MCP, which is a separate server, or I use use APIs. Now, a lot of you who might be watching this are thinking, I have got no idea how to do that. I've got no idea how to do APIs. I've got no idea how to do MCPs. Ask Claude or ask ChatGPT. They'll tell you how to connect it. And if it's not connecting, they'll tell you how to fix it. You've literally got the instruction manual in front of you to do it. So if I can do it, if I can have these APIs giving me keyword research and turning that round within a couple of hours instead of 3 days, then it allows me to really, kind of give some benefit to the client, that rather than being caught up in strategy and research, I'm actually physically doing something and changing and writing or optimizing a client's site. So I'm
So
just
there you
going
go.
to.
It's the first quick win there, isn't it? Cheaper SEO for people moving forward.
I don't
Is
know
that
about
what
cheaper,
you're
John.
saying?
It's moved into a whole different area, but yeah. So this is this I think people will like. So this just kind of gives you an idea. So I use Manus a lot, and I love Manus, and most people haven't heard of it. It just came out of the blue earlier this year, and it's a really good deep research tool. And what it allows me to do is it kind of steps me out of ChatGTP and Claude that are getting similar data. They often are very, very similar in data. This actually thinks a little bit out of the box. And I've just asked, very simple, scan UK awareness campaigns in health charities. I want to know what creative approaches, slogans, tactics are being used on social media. And I've asked to highlight 3 examples with links. So here it literally went on a 10-minute research. And you can see here it's telling me what it's doing. It's it's scanning health campaigns, it's pulling together data here. This is only the lightweight deep research. It could actually go on for a couple of hours, 2-3 hours, and actually come back with a huge amount of examples. And this is what it's come back with. So it's straight away, it's telling me that this one is getting a lot of traction, what it's seeing, it's doing a breakdown, it's informing me as a marketeer, what I need to know about this campaign. I can see obviously British Heart campaign, I can see a slogan, I can see the creative approach, I can even see the social media tactics. I can see, reels, it only had 601 likes, strong engagement, myth busting content, addressing misconceptions. So, again, this is, can inspire your campaigns, it can inform your campaigns, it can talk about what's actually working. And then you can see here heart healthy recipe content and Q&A. Air ambulance, and again I'm looking here, launched across 21 regional charity Instagram accounts. So how long would that take you manually to get that information there? Just simple things like this, to get all of this information would take you hours and hours and hours of diving into this. So you can see here that again, mental health, and then I can see here it's produced a document for me, and then it's also produced here what the creative approaches are, the social media tactics, and this is just a lightweight result. Usually I get a full series of documents and one big executive document. And then if I go here, you can see here I've got AI, Daily AI Industry Digest. This could be set up for a marketeer who is looking to track health charity notifications. Here you can see what I'm asking. This is a really big prompt. The better the prompt, the more you get. So you can see search AI industry stories for the last 24 hours, produce a concise, and you can see prioritized sources. And what happens is every single day I get notifications now, and it tells me, it tells me all the stories, it tells me everything that I need to know about that particular digest. So if I open this one up, and it's telling me what's happening within AI. Oops, sorry about that. That's my phone. Let me just stop that.
Just while you're doing that, Martin, one of the things that I've used this sort of tool for myself is as a relatively niche health condition, epilepsy affects 1 in 100 people. One of the things that I have a challenge with in terms of making people understand the broader impact of epilepsy is trying to get everyone to think about how many people they regularly come into contact with who actually have epilepsy. So For our Christmas appeal, we've done that. We've basically asked, I think we've asked ChatGPT to think about the average person in terms of, again, quite a long prompt, somebody of working age, who are the people who typically will pay money into our Christmas appeal, where those people live, the sort of activities that they do. And really interestingly, that's come up with, from 1 in 100 people, which you might not think you come into contact with very, very often, that their estimate is, as a single number, giving that huge breakdown that you've just seen, that around about 74 people is who we come into contact with during Christmas time who've got epilepsy. And that's across things like office dues, going to nativity plays, going to concerts, going to pubs and restaurants, etc., going to the supermarket to do your big shop. So that sort of insight, again, like you said, you would have spent weeks and months trying to work that out previously, and now you can do that really quickly, which means that you can work quite meaningful messages with a good sense of the data behind it in minutes rather than in weeks.
Yeah, and this is really quite surface as well. So I'm not using some of the APIs where I can attach it to, let's say, something like RFs, which is SEO data, or I can, there's a number of APIs that I can plug it into, like Search Console, and get data from there. This purely is going out and doing the research, or it's finding news stories for me. It's doing that work, and that agent, I don't have to prompt that every day. That does it twice, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, and then it goes out and does it. I think one thing I always do as well is I always pull together 3 pieces of research documents. So I'll do a ChatGPT version, Claude version, and I'll do a Manus version. That probably costs me around £60 a month to have those 3 tools. However, in any research, I then combine it into Claude, because Claude's better at handling huge amounts of data. And then I get a very precise and non-contradictory report of exactly what's happening. And that's because all of these different tools are very good at different things. So I prefer Manus for the deep research. ChatGTP is very good for writing and coding. Claude used to be pretty good for coding. Most people are using it for coding, but ChatGTP is just edging at the moment. So always be aware that your tools could change over this next, sort of 4 or 5 years, because there's advancements that are coming so very, very quickly, that at any time you could see, suddenly Claude is out of the game, or Perplexity is out of the game. It's very, very much like the web.com boom, where suddenly, people were spending hundreds of millions of pounds on technologies for the website that were soon out of date within 6 months because somebody had beaten them to it. Have you got another quick win, or shall I lead into another quick win?
Yeah. I've got a really quick win, which is one of the things that I know is very prevalent in the not-for-profit sector is the use of WordPress. And with the use of WordPress and other cheap content management systems that have plugins and bits of code that are shared, you tend to see a sort of blanket ban on bot traffic. And lots of charities are still doing that without realizing that actually all the tools that Martin's talking about there are actually tools that appear in your traffic sources as bot traffic. So if you do one thing following this today, and it would be a very cheap thing that you could do, it would be to look at whether you could do something more sophisticated in terms of your management of bot traffic to your site. So there are tools that enable you to have much better control rather than just a blanket ban. And that'll mean that you start to appear in AI overviews rather than not being there at all. And obviously, when you go to AI mode fully on Google, you'll start to see yourself in there as well.
That's a really good tip, John. And one thing I'd say about that is we've seen some really established brands who are in the training data. So if you go on the free version of ChatGTP, it relies on the training data. If you're on the paid version, if it can't find the information that it's looking for, it will go online and it will, go on Google, or it'll go on Bing, and it'll pull information. That's where you can suddenly become invisible. So if your hosters or people like Cloudflare that manage a lot of hosting, they're blocking a lot of the bots. Now, admittedly, some of the bots do need to be stopped because they can eat something called crawl budget. However, if you cannot stop the big 4, because you stop the big 4, you are going to lose most of your most of your traffic from that area or your mentions. Because at this time, we're not looking for rankings. What we're looking for is repeat visibility. Whenever anybody's searching for anything around epilepsy action want to be there. They want to be in the conversation. If those bots were not allowed to visit Epilepsy Action's website, then that's them out of the conversation. And instead, there will be somebody else there. It might be another charity, or it could be one of the health organizations in America could be placed in there. So for a UK-based charity, to have an American company based in there, it's not great. It doesn't help with visibility. So get in touch with your hosters, see what their strategy is. If you're on SiteGround, if you're on WP Engine, then straight away this is something that you need to do on Monday morning, because they are 100% stopping something like 90% of bots, including the big ones. And you have to ask them to allow bots to come to your site. So it's a permission-based thing, because I think SiteGround are worried that what will happen is if ChatGTP is referencing your content and you're saying, well, I didn't know about this, then they're protecting themselves by stopping all bots. But that's a really good call, to be honest, John. A really good call.
Very good. But back to you then. What's the next quick win, big tip? Beyond the free SEO and the getting bot traffic to your site, what's the
free SEO? I don't.
What's the next one?
Okay. Okay, they're getting a free content manager. I believe, obviously, I'm not going to talk about graphic design because I'm not a graphic designer, but I think graphic design is in a massive problem, and same with video. But one area that I do get involved in is obviously content creation. We just talked about visibility and growing that visibility. And if you have YouTube videos, you get something like 200 times more citations than somebody who doesn't. So every organization now has to get video out there, or they're not going to be cited. So now's the time to use things like ChatGTP or Claude, and start looking at your bigger long form pieces of content and saying, right, how can I make this LLM friendly? How can it be retrievable? And how can I make this into a multi-modular campaign? And it will tell you. It'll say, you need to put some infographics, you'll need to break this down, put some tables in there, because believe it or not, LLMs love a table to read and go through. It loves bullet points. And then secondly, how do I turn that into social media posts? How do I turn that into video? And very, very simply, by just going through your 5 top landing pages and saying, right, how do we make this multi-modular? You've now got a content strategy that fits across the whole platform, because there is this hidden attribution thing happening at the moment where people are finding things, finding videos, finding social media posts, especially in the travel sector. So now you've got to start, kind of not just relying on that long form, still very important, but you've got to start thinking, how can we, spread this out, spread its influence further. So that's a really
good point. It's something that we've been doing actually, which is it's really helpful for anybody who's responsible for briefing a creative team who, by their own admission, is not necessarily a creative. So we've seen people using it to say, this is what I want to achieve. Give me some sort of creative steer that I can then send off to a designer. And that's meant that you're kind of bridging that language gap between your sort of more kind of creative member of staff who talks in, sort of creative, kind of packages, and the person who's more interested in brass tacks. So yeah, a really good point that, Martin. And like you say, a free thing almost people can start doing now. Certainly a massive time saver.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a good point, because 2 things that ChatGTP has helped me with is this communication. I'm a data person, and I'm very, very much involved in that. And sometimes I can come across quite abrupt, and it's purely because my mind's firing at several thousand miles an hour. And ChatGTP has actually really helped me with email communication, where I throw my emails now into ChatGTP. And it started adding pleasantries and things like that, and so asking people how their weekend is, instead of, oh, you need to look at this, blah, 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 and just firing in it all. And that's purely just because how I think. It's not an insulting sort of perspective. However, it's then changed my behavior. And I now do that without having to need ChatGTP. I now do put in, I hope you had a good weekend.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of thing. Is it does allow you to create very good creative briefs. So I can't speak photographer, and recently we've been booking in some headshots for the company, and I don't know how to brief a photographer, but ChatGTP did. So I told it what I was trying to achieve. Here's our colours of the website. This is the feeling, and it came back with a full spec sheet for the photographer, and they said it was very professional. So again,
Ideal.
there you are. I mean, already we've talked about if you're struggling to do technical stuff, use ChatGTP to connect, kind of MCPs and APIs.
Yeah.
It can brief people. It literally can do everything. There's one aspect though, you should always fact check. So always question it. If you read something, just there's nothing wrong with you saying to ChatGTP or any LLM, please double check that, and it will do, and it will check it, and it's always worth doing that.
I think even if it gets it slightly wrong in terms of what it spits out, often the fact that it's wrong creates a question. I haven't used it yet for producing video briefs, but I know that the amount of questions and back and forth you tend to have with videographers about how many different cameras you need to be rolling at the same time, what the aspect ratios and that sort of thing. I'm sure that an AI could give you some stuff. Possibly, if it's wrong, it just opens that conversation up, because otherwise you're completely relying upon the video supplier or the photographer saying, "Hang on a minute, like, do you want this and that?" But actually, if you've prompted that conversation through a prompt yourself, that's a good thing.
No, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right, and it's again, as I say, like with the photographer, I sent that to them. They knew what I wanted to achieve, and then and then they came back with a list of questions, and we talked about it, and it worked very well. So things like that are just great. So I think for me, yeah, ChatGTP to inspire content strategy is an absolute, yeah. It's you're having another team member join you, and actually
Yeah.
kind of bounce ideas and research them, or even suggest ideas. So yeah, that's a really quick win, especially if you're a small charity and you don't have another voice next to you. You've got ChatGTP to actually bounce ideas or to research them, and I think that's the key thing. Is we're seeing usage, and we talked about this last week. Is rather than replacing jobs, actually everybody's getting an assistant. Everybody's getting that extra help to do their job faster, quicker, and actually better, to be honest, because you now have multiple access to all these tools, because it's not just a chatbot, it's doing everything else as well. So it's your quick win now.
Yeah. So this probably falls slightly outside of the category of quick and cheap, but there's context as to why I'm bringing it up. So this week, Charity Job released its annual report on the state of the jobs market. Two things came up in there. First of all, as we're probably all aware, there were less jobs available than there were this time last year. Secondly, the rate of wage inflation for our sector is higher than other sectors, probably because we were already sort of not the best paid sector anyway, and cost of living inflation has started to really kind of bite, and people are having to pay their staff more. So the average wage now across the sector is about £36,000 a year. So you could, if you wanted to, go and employ somebody, and I totally get behind the idea of charities creating jobs for people. That's really good. But if you were considering not spending that £36,000 on creating a new job, what you could do is get your own chatbot for your website and your social media within that budget. So we actually launched our chatbot this week. We had a live chat before rather than a chatbot. Our chatbot that's gone live this week is connected to our Microsoft Dynamics instance, and it's got a AI that surfaces all of our web information, built out a co-pilot. And the initial results are really, really, really good. So it first of all finds the answers to regularly asked things we get asked, things like driving, i.e. can I drive, things like, can I have help in terms of preparing myself for my next medical appointment. All those things that people probably want to do for self-service themselves are now much more possible. So that's really great. The other thing it does, because we've told it to do this, is if anybody uses any of our sort of trigger words in terms of concerns about safeguarding, it automatically connects somebody with an agent. So in the past, if somebody was saying that they were suicidal or something like that, A, they probably wouldn't have connected to an agent in the first instance, and B, we wouldn't have anything as a safeguarding measure in place there, but now we do. The third thing it does is it enables us to be a more 24-hour based service. So even though we haven't got staff available outside of office hours, what the chatbot is able to do is to recommend resources on our website that people can use to self-help, or B, arrange for people to be contacted by our helpline team when it reopens in the morning. And then C, something else we're looking at is whether we can refer to any other services. So, for example, we know that the Samaritans is a 24-hour service. We can refer to them. And the other thing we can do is refer them to online communities that we're part of, which have people who've also got epilepsy online at all hours of the day, so they can go there and get some comfort and relief from any feelings that they're having in terms of doom scrolling or anxiety and that sort of thing. So yeah, my quick win, as I said, not so quick, not so cheap, but I think worth doing, be to consider if you've got another £36,000 role coming up in your team, is it worth recruiting that role, or could you recruit an agent that can do a little bit of service delivery, a little bit of fundraising, even a little bit of marketing, and provide a more 24-hour service for your organization?
That's just amazing, John. I think also as well is when people or organizations think about chatbots, we kind of think of these, kind of the early HubSpot chatbots where you had to set up a flow. So there was a question, you had to select a question, and now it's far more intelligent than that. Have you been impressed by that kind of capability it does with Copilot?
I'm so impressed by it. So like yourself, I used HubSpot in the early days in terms of, I think they called it conversational marketing at the time, and it was interesting, but not particularly sophisticated. And at the time, I went off and I had a look at other tools, such as there was tools available from companies like IBM back then, but the price tag that came with them were phenomenal. So the sort of stuff you can get now, as I said, sub £36,000 would have cost you £1 million 4 or 5 years ago. So the technology is absolutely moved on dramatically, and it is now at a far more affordable rate. So yeah, if you ruled it out in the past due to perspectives on whether you think it's just something that the biggest charities do, we're not a massive charity. We are about £4 million turnover, 70 odd employees, and we've got a chatbot, and it's really good. We didn't pay an arm and a leg for it, so it's worth looking at for sure.
I think also as well is, and we've touched about this in the previous episodes, is we are moving to this agent to agent sort of landscape. So having chatbots on your site is the first step of having an AI agent on your site. And from that, it's only a matter of time before we start putting things called agent cards on the back end of your site. So it's like a little bit of script. So when an agent goes to the site, it actually talks to the chatbot. So the two chatbots are talking to each other, and that agent will say, "Oh, and I don't know, let's say somebody who said, I need some research about my condition," or that agent will go off and will find it. Now, if it finds a chatbot, they shift, kind of data and information between them so quickly, it will keep coming back to that agent over a very slow website. And that's the key thing, is that it's after speed. The agent wants to be as quickly as possible. So this is a really cheap way of actually getting into this next step and into this next landscape, because I think going forward, we are going to see the shift from websites being literally brochure type websites, and actually all the data and information will just be agent to agent. And this is a great way of getting onto that ladder.
Very cool. Back to you then for the next one.
Yeah, next. It depends on how controversial I can be, but
I think you can. Yeah, it's Friday. It's almost 2:30. Time for the controversy.
I think there's two areas where there's some quick wins, and I think if you're an organisation and you've got a small marketing team and you maybe have got an in-house technical director or dev or whatever, there's a lot of opportunities now where you can start looking at better automation of things like social media. So at the moment, a lot of social media departments will have a strategist. They will have a creative. They will have somebody who actually sits there and posts all of these individual things. All of that there, you could then say, well, okay, we'll use something like Buffer. We'll use one of those to distribute distribute this, and you'll pay really quite handsomely, £150 plus, depending on how many platforms you've got and how many posts. So that soon amounts up over a year, especially for an organisation if they've got multiple platforms. So to me, I think every marketing department now has to say, okay, right, like I've just shown you with Manus, is what could we do with ChatGTP or Claude to actually manage our social media? It can post. You can link already your ChatGTP or Claude to your Meta social media. It can be posting. It can be doing that. It can be looking at the data, pulling that through, and it can be telling you when is the best time to post. When are people typically posting? You could then say, okay, I want to post to somebody who's aged between 18 and 24. Here's the message. When's the best time? It will tell you because it's got access to that API, that information. And to me, I think over this next year to 18 months to 2 years, you really need to start looking at, do we need these platforms that are literally thinking, right, we need to add AI capabilities. So things like Buffer are thinking, right, if we add AI into it, but all it's doing is skinning ChatGTP. It's just putting a skin of ChatGTP over its core platform. When actually most organizations could remove £2,000 to £3,000 a year by just getting ChatGTP and Claude to do it initially, and just use that as your distribution. So as a quick win, I think first thing to do is connect up connect up to your social media channels, get that data flowing between it, get it connect up if you've got things like HubSpot or any other CRM, and just see what the flow is and run reports. And straight away you'll start getting an idea of who your demographic is and when is the best time to publish, when is the best time to do that. And we talked about saving time on keyword research. That would save a huge amount of time for an SEO manager. You wouldn't need your SEO strategist no more. Your social media strategist. You just need your social media manager. They know exactly, based on that data, when to post, when to schedule, when to do it. And that's very quick. That's it. So your social media team can literally go down very, very quickly. If you wanted, you could start using things like Reeve.art or Gemini to do your creative, and boom, you're down to one person.
It's a really interesting situation, Max. One of the things that I'm aware that a lot of charities use is tools to not just do the scheduling, but also do the monitoring of comments and that sort of stuff. And it's one of the roles that people probably come in and start doing quite soon out of university or out of a college course, but then quite quickly they find it quite repetitive. Even when you've got banks of information that come back to you, if all you're doing in busy times is just pasting back exactly the same information because you haven't got the time, you're probably not doing as good a job as a chatbot could do. Because this chatbot could say, "Hi, Martin, thanks for your question on blank. Here's an automated response." Whereas if you're just literally pasting out, thousands of things to direct messages you got from people and trying but failing to triage that effectively, when you're trying to get on with the rest of your career, which people do tend to do, as I said, because it's something you start off doing, but it isn't necessarily that interesting. Then there's a question mark there as to whether that's something you could look to do. Is it worth employing again an AI over a person in that situation? Because the AI isn't going to get bored and get recruited by anybody else. It'll sit there and do that job for you forever, which is largely administrative, which is interesting. Very interesting.
There's a solution called ManyChat, which is for Instagram, but it feels a bit like HubSpot in the CRM, where if somebody answers a question, asks a question about this, it does this, and it is a very, very good solution, but it's not AI. And as you said, the next level really is turning ManyChat into something like an AI solution, where if people are asking particular questions, or how do I support this event, an AI replied back and said, "Oh, just visit our page, blah blah blah." Because a lot of time people are scrolling, see something, they don't realize it's a clickable link or something like that. Just simple things, just mopping up all of these queries. And because it's instant as well, the reply is likely to happen while they're still on social media.
Yeah,
That to me is the thing, rather than getting an answer 3 days later when they go, "Well, actually, I'm not bothered now."
it's a really good point. Yeah, yeah, it's
We've
very, very good point. That.
Yeah. So and
Mm.
that's why things like leads that are actually generated using Facebook rather than sending them to a landing page works, because people are there then, and it's almost impulse buy. So having that AI would actually work into that impulse. Oh, I've commented, and then it does it. And I think also as well is maybe it's got blocking capabilities as well.
Mm.
I have you run an advert, and lo and behold, and this is in any sector, you'll get somebody make an offhand comment, and if it understood that and it could hide it, that'd be fantastic. That I
Mm.
think is the next level really for social media. But I think we're getting there. The automation of ads is happening. So it's far easier for an organization like Epilepsy Action to now set up something really intelligent and clever, as long as the data's there on Google Ads. And same with Meta. Meta's catching up tremendously. It's only a matter of time before we start getting that social media. But the way of speeding that
Yeah.
up is looking at your team and saying who fancies trying this for an hour, and seeing how we can
Mm.
connect it up, how we can get it to monitor this. So
Very cool.
yeah, yeah. No, I kind of shaved off some of the more controversial aspects of that.
Yeah. No, it's a good one. It's a good one. So it's back with me again now. I think for me, one of the things I wanted to talk about, because it's a big sort of passion area for me, is brand. So we did a rebrand last year, and it's really interesting that we live in this sector where everybody's really open and honest about their experiences. And there's a surprising number of organisations in the not-for-profit charity space who spend a lot of their time when working on brand trying to sort of nail down a really sort of high level of corporacy, which is really tricky because we haven't got by and large the budgets of really big brands, and also the challenge for anybody at the moment in terms of marketing and communication is that our routes to our customers are changing all the time. And in our case, our routes to our beneficiaries, our service users. So for me, I think one thing you could do that would be a really good extension of most charity brand guidelines is not going off and trying to define exactly how you want your brand to behave in artificial intelligence spaces, because you can't control that. That's going to be defined to some extent by the input and the output that it receives from people as prompts. But I think what you can do is sharpen up a little bit in terms of like how you want the tone of voice of your organization to come across in all forms. So whether that's in video, whether that's in in written communications, or as people who are either physically going into places like Reddit and talking about your organization, or an AI that is talking about your organization on your behalf. So I think, like, for me, a bit of kind of sort of optimization around what the real benefits that an organization delivers to its service users. And the point we make quite a lot internally at the moment is it's different to the products that you offer. So, the individual services that you offer, it's more about the benefits that you offer. So if you think about the analogy of sizzle and sausage, the things like helplines and sort of support groups, they're very much sausage. They are the means to get the benefit that somebody wants, which is the sizzle, which is things like empowerment, being able to feel as though they are heard and understood, and that sort of thing. that's what we deliver to people most of the time in my organization. It's that feeling that people can go on and achieve things, and that they can be confident in going about and doing their everyday things that they want to do. And that is common across a lot of different charities in this space. So I think anything that you can do to sharpen up your brand proposition in that area, I think would be a massive benefit.
I totally agree with you. It's really interesting when, this is all about AI. These 3 episodes have been about AI, but what is super important is the human side. It really is, and it is, from an SEO perspective, you've got EEAT, experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. That's something that Google holds every single web page to account with, that you've got to demonstrate your expertise and your experience, and trustworthiness. So that trustworthiness is about getting those human stories onto the page, whether it's a testimonial, a case study, or a video, or something that you're pulling it along. And if you ask Gemini or you ask ChatGPT, how do I optimize this page? It will say you need to add EAT signals. You need to add that. And I think the wider aspect of this is, if you go into Perplexity and say, who is Epilepsy Action, or who is your organization, it will really break down, what it knows about you, when it was formed, what the organization does. And then it will also pull in the people around the organization. So it comes back to the tone of voice of not just what your public front is, but also what your people are saying. And it will pull all that data through, and that's how it's understanding an organization. It doesn't just understand you from your website anymore. It's literally reverberating across every little fingerprint, as I call it. So to me, when I talked earlier about getting your landing page and saying, right, okay, ChatGPT, break this down into multi-modular, it will 100% recommend that you use customers case studies. It will use little snippets of this, or whether you've done a podcast, or whether you've done this. It wants to know the human fingerprint of it before it trusts it and cites it onto AI. And so what you have to do is to obviously get ranked now on Google, or cited on AI. You have to balance that. So your content has to be easily read by LLMs, but also you've got to put a little sweet trail where it can go around eating all these little things, the infographics, and it's all about the human side. It's the more fingerprints you can put on there of, we've done this, we've done that, we've done fundraising, and the fundraising's got these people, and this person liked it, and we've got this video, and we've got this podcast, and all of that aspect really helps you tremendously, far more than ever before. Where if you just relied on your website and your Facebook page, that's not enough now. You've really got to expand it onto things like Reddit, onto forums, and something that's really overlooked, I think, from organizations, is you've got to go back to that old thing, and nobody says this word anymore, which is outreach. And I don't mean digital PR, but I mean, start talking to people who've got websites, who support you. And they might be a blogger, they might be an influencer, or just outreach them and see how you can try and get their human story aspect, and see how you can work together. And that is a big fingerprint, that if you've got this cloud of people around your organization who, and again, Epilepsy Action have done it incredibly well, is that's the way of showing the impact of the organization, but also a bigger fingerprint.
I think the thing that's really interesting for me with this as a technological advancement is the sort of big disruptions in search so far have been largely logical changes, in that, if you're moving towards a mobile first listing, it's logical because most people are viewing on mobile. If you're prioritizing organizations that aren't doing keyword stuffing, again, that's logical based on looking at backlinks to look for authority and that sort of thing. Whereas this change, which is very much about looking for sentiment, is an attempt of the machines to try and think as humans do, which is emotion trumps logic every time. we make decisions emotionally and justify them via logic. And if you think about all of your deep feelings towards any organization or brand, it's how they've made you feel normally rather than the things that you've done for them. So I think the thing that Martin's talking about there of collaborating with organizations that are supportive of you or of individuals who are supportive of you is really important, which is part of the reason why we've done so much work in the last year to try and bring vloggers on board for us to talk about epilepsy and epilepsy action in their own words. It's because we've been able to create great relationships there, and those people can tell part of our story that we can't tell because we can't say, with a great level of impact at an emotional level, we deliver all of these emotional benefits for people. It's much better for someone to say that with a degree of tension and emotion in their face because you as the audience believe it. So I think that's another thing to think about within that brand framework I was mentioning, is just how do you build something that's memorable, that makes somebody feel something. And that's not deciding whether on smaller and smaller and smaller pieces of paper your logo should be top right or top left, a minimum size, alongside particular colors in particular situations. That's all marketing bollocks. The stuff that really matters in brand is the stuff that makes people feel.
Yeah. No, that's great. I thought that since we've come to the end now, I thought it'd been great just to sum up with maybe one or two lines of what we think is the best advice for people to get going. Do you want me to start so you can think about it?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, you
I'll put
start.
you on the
Yeah.
spot there.
Yeah.
I think for me is my tip is when ChatGTP came along in November 2022, there was a lot of people scared to touch it. A lot of people just weren't getting involved and still not getting involved. And one thing I would just say is experiment. Go on it, learn it, tweak it. There's lots of free courses. ChatGTP, OpenAI, Gemini. There are loads of free courses at the moment to help you do something called prompt engineering. So rather than just saying, write me a social media strategy, by prompting, by giving it more information, you can be very successful. But the main thing is experiment and don't be scared, because you will find benefit in there, 100%.
Yeah, I would totally echo that. And the thing I would say is that we are being forced to experiment because, the charity sector is used normally to being right at the tail end of technological advancement, whereas because so many of us are so reliant upon informational searches to bring people into our orbit, we're having to experiment. The worst thing you could do right now is put your head in the sand and hope the storm passes. It's not going to pass. Things are changing. The people who look for it, the opportunity out there is potentially really good. The Cancer Research UK example we gave at the beginning of this webinar series shows that you could potentially, for the first time in 15, 20 years, have a chance of competing with some of the larger charities within your niches on things that were previously out of reach. So embrace it, go for it. Even if you don't manage to achieve your goals, you'll learn something along the way. And most importantly, make yourself more employable. Which will mean that you will have a job once all the machines have decided all the lower value jobs are no longer things people can do anymore.
No, absolutely. Great advice again, John. And thank you for being involved in this three-part
Thank you.
series. It's been really insightful getting your insights from your perspective.
Thank you.
I
You
really
too.
enjoyed that. Really enjoyed that, and I hope everybody else has enjoyed it. And as John said last week, is that if you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out through LinkedIn, through wherever. If you've got any questions or need any direction, myself and John, I'm sure,
Yeah, more than happy.
very happy to help you. So thank you, everybody, and it'd be nice to do this maybe in 3 months or 6 months, John, and
Yeah,
see where things
definitely.
have changed. If that'd be a
Yeah,
great one to do.
absolutely. I'm here for it. Yeah, good stuff.